This is Fundraising Growth Now, the podcast for arts and cultural organizations wanting to build stronger donor relationships and raise more money. It's part of the RSC coaching program and is hosted by founder and CEO Bob Swaney. For the latest insights and information, join our mailing list at rscfundraising.com.
In our previous episode, I spoke with RSC's principal consultant Jeremy Hatch regarding the challenges of and solutions to finding and keeping and engaging top-level staff and volunteers. In this second and final segment of the discussion, Jeremy and I will focus more on the new and some of the ongoing challenges to arts and cultural fundraising programs, especially as we enter into the new year.
We wanted to talk some about the biggest risks and setbacks right now in arts fundraising and how we viewed at least some of the top performers avoiding those kind of pitfalls. And I think specifically about things related to COVID and the money that's been tied to COVID. In fact, someone, I think just yesterday, in fact, said this to me, that they saw the consumption of that government money that has been awarded over the past year and a half, that when that dries up, it's going to be like going over a cliff because their earned revenue's hasn't caught up yet. Do you see that as a danger? And if you do, how are you helping clients prepare? How are you helping our colleagues prepare for that?
There's a few interesting things happening. I think the first is, we've been very fortunate to have all this government investment. What that has meant, however, is that organizations have not had to make very difficult decisions for staffing, programming, and cuts. And boards haven't been as engaged, and so they have not been asked to do much and make hard decisions because we've been in good shape. So that's a big one, and I don't think that's solved yet. The good news for our clients is, at the very least, all of our clients focused on fundraising best practices and growing the annual fund and continuing to be out there asking all the way through. And so our clients, I think, are better served than the ones who went dark and said, oh, we shouldn't fundraise right now, or we don't have to fundraise because we got this stimulus money. The second one, I think, is that we don't know. The early indications are that the audience is coming back slowly. And even organizations who were very conservative about making sales projections are seeing them fall under. So we were hoping to see 70% of our audience back, and we're seeing 50, and it could be several years to return that. And, I think some of that's from the mandates and the requirements to be able to attend. Some of that's due to our audience saying, I'm not ready yet. And some of that, I think, is our audience is saying, I'm done with that. I'm not going to do that anymore. And so I think realistically, it's going to be several years to return where earned income is in regrowth mode. And there are implications to that. That's going to hurt.
Yeah, it's funny because the contributed revenue continues to increase. I mean, we certainly saw, so individual giving, I know corporate giving suffered. We probably don't have to take a lot of time to explain why, because businesses have been down. But people have continued to be very generous throughout this. Even today, even though performances now are starting to ramp back up, the feeling I'm getting from folks I talk to is they're waiting for the other shoe to drop. They're saying, when do people stop being generous? I don't think that necessarily we have to subscribe to that belief that people will become less generous. The organizations that I saw succeed throughout the pandemic were the ones who could continue to communicate, who could continue to find ways to add value, who could communicate that value. And there's no reason that you should stop doing any of those things, even entering post-pandemic environment. So I don't know necessarily that it's going to stop. Now, I think there are challenges to it, not the least of which are human resources within our performing arts organizations, because now that performances are coming back or facilities are reopening, now we've got all sorts of operational distractions to deal with again. And as you know, I've joked a lot over the years about how much more money we could raise if we just didn't have all these performances and stuff to deal with. And then it came true. And I'm not glad it came true, but it was interesting that it came true. And I don't know if there's a reason we have to lose that momentum, but there's certainly some hurdles. And are you working now with folks on those things now that they cannot be laser focused on fundraising alone? How are you helping them stay focused on it while they're reincorporating everything else back into their lives?
Yeah, there's not a lot I'm going to miss about 2020, except the focus of our clients and particularly our executives, because for a time there was not much else to do but fundraise. And so we had laser focus, as you say, around that. And that's going away. I think it's a particular challenge as we talk right now, coming back and with, complications and everything else related to a reentry that are proving very time consuming for senior leadership. That's an issue. And so to me, for a lot of our clients, it's okay. I'm not going to be able to give you 7 things to do this week like I could a year ago. So here's the 1 or 2. The thing about fundraising is there's always deadlines. So if all we can do is focus on those donors who should be renewing before December 31st, then let's just do that. We can produce that list. We can see the urgency of that. Let's just take action there and say that's what we can do right now. And that's okay.
Smaller bites, but sometimes more important bites. And I think that's good. Particularly going into the, we're in the last quarter now of the calendar year, which has always amplified fundraising for everyone. And the donor behavior, to me, is very encouraging. I mean, people are making larger gifts. People who made money in the stock market continue to make money in the stock market. They're needing to get rid of that money or give it to Uncle Sam. And I think they choose to, many of them choose to give it to things like orchestras and opera companies and ballets and museums and so forth. And that's all good. And I don't necessarily see that changing a lot. But I have seen a little bit of pensiveness, I guess, on the part of some of the arts organizations to continue to assertively fundraise, because they think, everybody pulled together, did the hard stuff, and we shouldn't bother them, is sometimes even the word that I hear. And have you heard that? And if you have, how are you helping people kind of work through it? Or this idea of saying, no, it's okay to continue to ask for increases. It's okay to ask people to pay early on multi-year pledges. So how are some of those things looking?
Yeah, I think if you've stayed relevant and stayed engaged with your donors, I think they're going to be generous. And I don't think what happened last year was because of the fires of our organizations. I think it was because of the good hearts and generosity of our donors who cared about community and wanted to see these things continue when our whole industry was maybe in peril. And so they stuck with us. I don't know why they would stop sticking with us a year later when we're coming back. We should be even more open to generosity because of that. And, you're right. I think, today is the wealthiest moment in the history of the wealthiest country that ever was in the world. People of means have capacity. And if we line up with their values and we ask them to be generous, I think they're going to be one way or another. And it would be at your peril to say, oh, we've done enough fundraising. I don't think that day will ever come.
I hope not. Yeah. So some of the other big challenges, some of the big risks right now have been, we talked a little bit about operational distractions. We talked about getting maybe a little too comfortable with the COVID money and not peering around the next corner enough to prepare for it in time. I think that's always a risk. Good, solid organizations are dealing with it. Others maybe not so much. But probably the last one on this list is that there are a lot of moving targets right now that are not directly related to fundraising for these organizations. So we talked about performances and things coming up, but there are also huge personnel issues. There are volunteer engagement issues. For whatever reason, everyone seems to want to come out of this with a strategic plan, which I'm not against, but it's a huge time commitment to get it done. And so are you seeing at least routinely, are you seeing other distractions that you have to help organizations deal with, even distractions away from fundraising, even if it's important? the things that we have to help them balance over and over again? Are you seeing a short list of things like that?
Yeah, there are a few things. I agree with you. I think strategic planning right now, when the house is still smoldering, is a mistake. Let's get back to even keel, I think, and rather than saying this is the moment we rethink our mission. And I don't know if it is. I admire that ambition, but it may be just a moment to say, okay, let's get through another year and then see where we are. Beyond that, I think there are a lot of staffing challenges and culture challenges too. So I think the highest performing organizations are finding a way to come back together in person. And I think that's probably controversial to some folks, and that's fine. One way or another, they're saying, here's how the board's going to come back together and work together again because there's value that. And here's how we're going to slowly but surely bring our work culture, our office culture, our organization back together and live and in person over time. And that can, you got to do that safely and smartly and figure out how to integrate everyone back. But that's one. And so where there are problems, people are, still too kind of stretched out. And it's to get everyone lined up going the same direction is a challenge right now. And then lots of people are leaving. That's happening in every industry.
They are, and we don't seem to have good replacements for them.
That's right.
So I think the next thing I want to touch on is just we're an organization of habits, and we encourage folks we work with to develop habits as well. And we're usually low in number on those at any given time. You said that a minute ago. With board, you don't give them 20 things to do, give them 3 things to do. Or even staff as they're coming out of the pandemic. Don't overload them to the point where they can't get anything done. Focus on a few things. And that's kind of the mantra of our work. So coming out of this, are you seeing 2 or 3 universal practices or habits that translate with most clients? I don't mean cookie cutter stuff per se, but just things that you say, listen, this works in a big place, it works in a little place, it works in a place that's in staff transition, works in a place that's about to light the fuse on its next set of performances or gallery opening, whatever that looks like. Are you seeing some consistencies with fundamentals that are needed, particularly now?
Certainly. I think being active relationship fundraisers is key. The high performing executives and CEOs and directors of development are finding ways to see their donors. They're finding a way to do it one way or another, or staying active or hitting the phone. So maintaining those relationships now, which got a little harder. A year ago, it was very easy to catch people on the phone. Now it's a little harder. People are busier, out more. But that's one, maintaining that. Sticking to a fundraising calendar. So in RSC's approach, you want to be front-loading your philanthropy. So as much as you can in the first half of the year. Well, those that started that way earlier in the summer are ahead now significantly of those who didn't because of Delta and the operational problems. In June, things looked different than they did in August, September, and they looked worse for most places. And those who got ahead of the plan are in better shape. So that'd be a second one, sticking to the plan. A third is celebrating successes. I know so many fundraising programs that never get to win. They never get to say, great job for us, or, we achieved some great things this year. Because what they're often told is, well, marketing is down $40,000, so you're going to have to make that up. We have 2 weeks left in the fiscal. Let's do what you can, and that's terrible for culture. That we're competitive people, and we should celebrate our success. And I can't tell you all the times where, as part of a weekly coaching call, say, hey, what happened this past week? And somebody will, as an afterthought, say, oh, we got this sponsor that was from 4 years ago back for $5,000. Are you kidding? That's wonderful. That's amazing. Right.
Exactly.
For 4 years, and at the end of the pandemic, you got it back for $5,000. Well, we wanted 20. Well, 5,000 is a great step forward. And so, we don't let ourselves win. We don't celebrate success. And then what do we think is going to happen with our people? They're not going to be inspired in the long term to stick around, I don't think.
Well, that's right. Celebration. Sometimes people hear that word and they're like, "Yeah, come on, that's a soft word." But I don't think it is. I don't think it's a soft word.
I agree. It is not a soft word.
It's not a soft word, and because that sort of celebration breeds confidence and it breeds success. And we know that confidence and success are two things that we have to voice frequently to attract and retain donors. So it is not fluffy to celebrate the wins, even small wins that an organization has, particularly in fundraising, particularly right now as fundraising takes a bigger piece of the pie of the overall operating budget. As ticket sales or admission sales have to come back up. Fundraising is going to take a huge piece of the pie in the interim.
And we may have to ask board members to step up, and a board chair, someone's going to have to lead this, and not an executive or development director, to say, look, the stimulus is over and we still have these challenges, and now it's the board's turn to step up in a way we may have had to 18 months ago, to write checks, to stay open, to lean into today's need, because we've been lucky enough to get through past the last couple of years.
That's right. And so loosely related to that, something you said earlier, and I want you to, if you have a story without naming names, tell the story. But when we had to adjust, like everybody else did in whatever that was, March of 2020, I suppose. And so we went to online coaching, which was something we'd never really done a great deal of, because there just wasn't receptivity for it. Now there was no options. The demand was exclusively for that. But it also afforded us the opportunity to work with some very small budget places who had not done significant amounts of growth level fundraising. So low resources, even on a good day, and it certainly wasn't a good day that as we were entering into the relationships with them. And so what were some of the commonalities, best practices that you employed that helped them get the results that they had to have?
We have usually one of two kind of clients. One is in a pinch with a problem, and sometimes dire, and others with an opportunity. Both are important. The opportunity ones are more exciting, more vibrant, more alive. Somebody saying, it's going well, we want to do even better. And so I think we saw a lot of that last year, both of those. But we had a few where I'm thinking of one of our clients started with us a few months into the pandemic. And the first call, the executive director said, hey, I don't want to know what my peers are doing, our little orchestra, our group 4, group 5s. I want to know what the big guys are doing. I want to know what the group 1s are doing. And that's what we're aiming for, to emulate as best we can. So that is the starting position. And I will tell you if it gets too complicated or I don't follow, or that's way beyond what we can handle. You just lay it on me, man. And so let's see what we can do in terms of modeling ourselves after our industry leaders. And so I think that kind of ambition is key. The other one, not wallowing in the challenges, but looking for the opportunity, saying, look, we can't help this, and let's go anyway. Another one I think is, okay, who on the volunteer side can we count on? And let's not whine about who we don't have, but if we've got 3 or 4 that are going to help us right now, given these circumstances, let's go with that. And then asking without fear. We've got a few clients where they actually expanded corporate and sponsorship over the period of the pandemic, which the Chronicle of Philanthropy is not writing articles about how sponsorship growth has gone up in the last 18 months. They've invited opportunities, they've engaged volunteers, and they've asked with confidence.
I've heard development directors particularly basically say they've abandoned their sponsorship work. They don't think there's any there anymore. And I juxtapose that against someone who I'm working with directly. By their account, not by my account, they're already at 78% of their sponsorship goal. And they've got concerts through May. This is an orchestra. They've got concerts through May. First of all, they met the concert sponsors, they met the businesses where they were, with their recovery and their employee retention and what it was going to take to get their businesses back up. They worked with them on payments. They found that most corporations didn't even want recognition right now because they didn't like the optics of it, but they really wanted to support in this case, the orchestra. And so they just made a completely 100% adaptable sponsorship program that they can implement and satisfy. The company's happy, the symphony's certainly happy, and they're way out ahead of the curve. They're going to start working on their fiscal 23 stuff in January for sponsorships. I mean, they're that far out ahead, and I'm just like, that's fantastic.
Yeah, most companies are still doing pretty well. There's some types of businesses in our economy where that's certainly not true. I think this is a good chance to say maybe we should leave the restaurants be, in terms of why don't we get a sponsor from that? Restaurants are a tough business, and so maybe we can just move off of them instead of hanging. That'd be a big focus. I know there's some exceptions, but in general,
food and beverage,
or were there, food and beverage instead of local influence, local decision making, where we have board leadership in place. I mean, that should be your start, and that's probably enough to keep you busy for a whole year.
That's true. I want to ask you, Jeremy, that if you had just one piece of advice, if what we've said has been overwhelming in any way, or when someone hears it says, well, that's all great, I don't know where to start, what's the next thing, the next best thing that someone should be doing?
I would say call on your donors, engaging the people who are close to you. If you can make that a habit every day of reaching out to a donor personally, corporate, institutional, individual, it doesn't matter what. So whatever you have to do, if you can do that for an hour a day, awesome. If you can do that for 10 minutes a day, okay, that's a place to start. So just like running a marathon or getting healthy or earning your MBA or learning a foreign language or learning guitar, which I'm trying to do, you got to just practice a little bit every day, and that will pay dividends. And so if you say, look, I'm not good at this, I don't like talking to people, you can get better on the phone. You can get better talking to your board members. You can get better at asking. You just need to work on relationship fundraising a little bit every single day that you can.
That's those sort of behaviors I know will be difficult for some folks, but it's absolutely the time to develop it.
It sure is. There's time to go before the holidays and year end. This is still prime time, and calendar year end, I think, is where our needs as fundraisers and nonprofits match the donors' interest in thinking about their own tax situation and personal philanthropy. That lines up really well at calendar year end. June 30th doesn't mean anything. Giving Tuesday doesn't mean a lot, but calendar year end does mean something.
It sure does. And it's just around the corner. So, so Jeremy Hatch, our principal consultant at RSC, thank you so much for your time on this. Really appreciate it. And anyone listening, you have any questions, please feel free to email us. We're happy to answer those questions and make sure that, particularly at calendar year end, if you're struggling with any kind of approach or any questions that you have about how can you reach out to people and what should you say or anything like that, listen, we're just happy. Our gift is we're just happy to help right now. If you have that kind of question, let us know. We'd be happy to give you a response on it.
Thanks, Bob. I enjoyed our conversation.
All right. Thanks so much, Jeremy. Take care, and take care, everyone else.
Thank you for listening to this edition of Fundraising Growth Now. To find previous episodes, to join RSC's mailing list, or to find more information about our client services and success stories, please visit rscfundraising.com.